Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing well. I hope your garden is thriving and also your life is thriving. So today I want us to go through a few mistakes that I've made in my garden before, and I don't want you to make them. So here are 5 mistakes you should not make in your kitchen garden. Mistake number 1, planting at the wrong time. Every crop thrives in a different season. If it's tomatoes, they don't like the very cold season, but if it's spinach, they don't like the very wet season. So make sure you choose the right season for your crops. That's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is not feeding your crops properly. Every crop, like yourself, needs nutrition. So you must make sure that your soil is well fed before you plant. So you must make sure that you have manure, compost, and every other fertilizer that you need to feed your crops. The other mistake is not feeding your crop as often as required. So most green leafy vegetables and tomatoes require to be fed at least twice a month, that is bi-weekly. You can use a foliar, especially if it's green leafy vegetables, and use a fertilizer or an organic fertilizer rich in phosphorus if you're planting fruiting crops. And that leads us to the next mistake, which is using the wrong fertilizer. Now, this is a mistake so many people make, and people imagine that as long as I spray foliar to my plants, they're supposed to be able to produce as well as I would like them to produce. Now, if you spray your fruiting vegetables or your fruiting plants a lot of foliar, they're going to have a lot of leaves. They're going to be very bushy, lush green, but they're not going to have fruits. So once your plants start fruiting, or once they are at the stage where they're supposed to fruit, you should stop spraying them with foliar. Now, foliar also on spring onions, I've realized that if you spray a very high nitrogen fertilizer to your onions, especially spring onions, they are going to be attacked by a lot of aphids. I don't know the science behind it, but that's what I've observed. So once your onions have started having leaves, you should reduce the amount of foliar you spray, or check the nitrogen levels in your fertilizer. So the N should, if you're buying a already made fertilizer, make sure that the N is not as high, because it's going to affect them. It's going to make your onions get affected by aphids. It's going to make your fruits not to fruit properly. So you need to check that. But if you're spraying the homemade foliar fertilizers, just reduce them, or just do away with foliar fertilizer after your onions have started having leaves and after your tomatoes have started fruiting. This is because it's going to increase the leaves. It's also going to make aphids attack the leaves. So mistake number 3 then is under fertilizing your plants. So some of us, just because we're organic farmers and we don't use chemical fertilizers and we don't use pesticides, we just say just put it in the soil. As long as you've put manure, it's going to thrive. That's not true. All plants, for them to thrive, they need to be fed. So you just have to make sure that you don't underfeed your plants. You feed them as often as possible, and you also take care of the soil. Remember, we always say that your soil is king. So in case you're having a big portion of land, or you're farming commercially, or your land is big enough, please just do a soil test. If you have a small kitchen garden, you could go around it. But if it's bigger, I always recommend just do a soil test, so that you know what you're applying and when you're applying and the amount you're applying, so that you get the maximum amount of benefits from your garden. Otherwise, you're just going to be planting and complaining always, I don't get fruits, I don't get a good harvest. It's because your crops are underfed. And the next mistake people make, especially when you're growing leafy vegetables, like I grow a lot of them, is not harvesting as often as you should. So you realize that the more you harvest your leafy greens, the more they produce. But if you just let them stay just to harvest once and do away with them, you don't get the maximum out of your plants, and you'll be wondering, how can someone become sustainable in a small garden? Keep harvesting, especially the leafy vegetables. Harvest them weekly. They are going to produce more, and when you harvest them weekly, also feed them. Feed the leafy vegetables, feed them with foliar. Make sure you top up your soil. You can mulch with manure that has fully composted, or you can just mulch them to make sure that when that decomposes, improves the soil health, so that you keep harvesting your vegetables as long as you can. So I hope you've learned something in this video, and you're not going to make these mistakes when you garden. Now, the other mistake that you could make is planting at the wrong place. So you realize that there are There are crops that do well in full sun. There are crops that do well under partial shade. There are crops that do well under full shade. So just make sure you check out my video that I did. I'm going to link it in the description, the video that I did on the crops that thrive under shade. So crops like tomatoes do not like the shade, they like full sun. Onions also like full sun. I see them thrive better when they're on full sun as opposed as when they're under shade. But things like lettuce, they will always thrive. They will always thrive even under shade, and they do well. So make sure you plant your crops at the right places. Thank you so much for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.